Something that surprises many is how religious many kindred still are, despite being the damned in all regards that matter. Many will be hoping to regain a part of themselves they have lost, or perhaps to redeem their forsaken soul. Many are just true believers and hold a genuinely contradictory belief. Or perhaps they think they are special, or given another task that allows them to exist in this form. In truth, I could be here all night guessing why people follow the creeds that they do. In the end, it matters not, for they will hold true to them regardless of the reason. As many will tell you, religion is a powerful tool. Given to mortals to command them, it is beyond useful. But if you get a group of kindred to follow on, well, then your power is going to be immeasurable. See, today I wish to speak of a sect that has fallen from power in the modern night due to their allegiance and slow integration into the Camarilla. Although the wording implies it is a lot more of a one-sided merger, not an equal combination it actually is. But in the past, this sect was a mighty power, and is indeed even older than the Camarilla and the Sabbat. I speak of the kindred sect of the Middle East, the Ashira. See, they have been around for a lot longer than most know, since the birth of the Islamic age at around the year 600 or so, I forget the exact date. And despite what people think, it is not just a powerful vessel for the Banu Hakim to rule over people. For in truth, it was actually founded by an offshoot of another clan, the La Sombra. See, the Banu Hakim owe a lot of power to the Arabic world, as they tied themselves to them very tightly. But they didn't truly believe in the thing. While they would uphold its ideals and morals for the major part, but praying and believing in a god, not so much. In the same way that the La Sombra and the Ventrue did in Europe. Remember, powerful tool. So their attachment was not an attachment to genuine faith, but the power that came from it. However, the Ashira actually do hold to the faith of Islam, or at least the kindredized version of it. Like how most of the Book of Nod is a Christian myth with kindred parts first and foremost. But I don't have time to go over their exact details and belief structures, just as I have never gone over the Book of Nod. Speak to a priest if you want such insights, for you'll find little of those in my presence. Although, they would not use the term priest, of course, as they are Muslim, and have different names for essentially everything. But that being said, they work a lot like we do in the Camarilla. And that's primarily because we at the Camarilla were taking notes. See, as I said before, they are an older organization, and while the kindred of Europe have been around for just as long, they are not one continuous sect, due to the whole First Inquisition, Anarch Revolt, all that chaos that went along at that period. So when the Convention of Thorns was held and restructure was to be had, the Banu Hakim were there, along with some members of the Ashira. So, when we were remaking our sect, we used the parts of theirs that we liked, and threw away what was worthless for us. But to briefly go over some of their structure, their prince equivalent is known as a sultan, which is what we copied from them, but below them is a spiritual figure, known simply as an imam, something we didn't like at all and didn't copy. This disconnection between rulership and spirituality also in some ways inspired the Sabbat. I think. I also wouldn't be surprised if this is a bit of a coincidence, because the two groups genuinely despise each other, which probably resulted in the Ashira's closer ties to the Camarilla. They do have some other titles of note, however, such as a mullah, who is a scholar of some sort, I believe, and more importantly, the Kadai, who acts a lot like a sheriff, but with a bit more responsibility, perhaps a harpy and a sheriff combined, for they are judges in crimes and offences, but also in matters that are minor, as in small disputes between people. In essence, this makes them judge, jury, and sometimes executioner. I never get bored of that saying. Another noticeable difference is that they have different names for every clan. However, unlike the likes of the Libon, these are not separate bloodlines with noticeable changes, but the clan as we know them, with all of the same powers and only minor differences in the way that they behave. For example, the most numerous of their number outside of the Banu Hakim are probably the La Sombra, who they call the Qaibilat al-Kayal, who still take on their religious aspects and just do it all in the name of Islam. So, to save time, I shall list them and just mention if there are any noteworthy changes. Names I will probably get wrong, mind you, since I've never spent the time to actually learn Arabic. I'm working on it, I assure you. Another commonality you will find in their ranks are the Bruha, who they call the Bayat Mushakis, who actually take on a more warrior aspect and view themselves as the soldiers of the Ashira. Another core pillar of them is the Nosferatu, or Baya Mutasharid, who act more like guards and guardians for holy and sacred places than they do spies. The Toreador are here, of course, known as the Re'in el-Fen, but they're actually more like scholars with an artistic flair. They commonly work as calligraphers, writers, and architects, and they make some very detailed versions of the Quran. The Ventrue are of course here, though in much lesser number, known as the El-Hijazi. They act like upholders of culture, more so tying to Arabic culture than the Muslim faith. But, for the most part, just act like Ventrue overall. The Gangrels are of course here. They go by the name of the Washin. They often aid other kindred who seek to travel the dangerous desert sands, since if you don't know a place to hide in the day, you might be in trouble. The Rabnos that are here are known as the Bayat Mujrim, and are hated here as well as anywhere else. In fact, I think they go as far as to say that their name literally means criminal. The Malkavians, known as the Bayat Majnun, are actually quite respected here, and often listened to as prophets, albeit unreliable ones, but still sacred and should be listened to for their wisdom. There's actually quite a lot going on with them, unlike the others, for they seem to have a rivalry with Jinn, or genies as we know them. But this could be a myth, yet I wouldn't bet on that. This is the Malkavians we are talking about, remember. Something can be a lie and a truth at the same time for them. The Salubri are here, known as the Al-Amin, who are mostly just here to hunt barley throughout the lands, as well as anyone else who isn't correctly spiritually worshipping stuff, making them the pseudo-inquisitors of sorts, or whatever the Muslim equivalent of that word would be. I don't actually know that one. And the last I will speak of are the Cappadocians, for a handful of them did survive and remain here as Qaibilat al-Mu'at. They act more like gravekeepers and scholars of the dead, rather than actual necromancers, which is probably why most just leave them alone. I've listed all of the ones that I can remember off the top of my head, which is probably why I've said about half of their names wrong, but almost every clan and bloodline can in fact be found here, for better or for worse, and they will all have their own name. But I think I should move on to their history, for it's not exactly as clear as you would think it would be, especially given their past. So, as I said before, they were not actually founded by the Banu Hakim, as some would expect, but the La Sombra. Well, one La Sombra to be specific, Suleiman ibn Abdullah, and if the myths is to be believed, he was actually one of the Prophet Muhammad's disciples, who, after the death of his beloved Prophet, decided to convert as many kindred as he could, as supposedly he knew that there was the possibility of salvation even for the likes of us, but only if you submit to this new religion at the time. During this time, the Banu Hakim, or to be more exact, Hakim himself, took little note of the growing group of religious kindred until their numbers started to become quite considerable, and some of the Banu Hakim went over and joined the sect, although it's unclear if they held true to the faith first and foremost, or the clan and their antediluvian. I would hazard a guess and say the clan was still their priority, but their goals were aligned with the growing sect, and so they threw in together. Suleiman, now with the help of an antediluvian, started to spread Islam wherever he could, and you can actually tell which group was responsible for which expansion, for the Banu Hakim primarily conquered through war and replaced the local inhabitants, whereas the Ashira converted the already living people to the faith instead. Both obviously did this via force. Oh, and Suleiman is still around, although many, even some within the Ashira, question his story. He is well learned and has been virtuous for the most part. Ever since the Islamic Golden Age, he's become a lot more hands-off, so to speak, no longer leading from the front and just advising others instead. But in the modern nights they have become more aligned with their once enemy, the Camarilla. The clear start of this was the Convention of Forms. Whatever decision Hakim came to, where he wanted closer ties to the Camarilla, was heard by the Ashira, and attempts were made to make them more aligned, albeit very, very slowly, as you can't just scrub away hundreds of years of hostility between immortal beings with just a handshake. Instead, what it took was some time and a wedding. The Vermilion Wedding, as it is known, where a Toreador in the Camarilla married a Banu Hakim in the Ashira. This is one of the main events that led to the Banu Hakim, not within the Ashira, to join the Camarilla, and those that are, to rely on them a lot more. After all, when the Islamic world started to fall behind, it affected the Ashira greatly, and they've never truly been able to recover without outside help. And due to their greater hatred and common wars with the Sabbat, they have been leaning more and more on the Camarilla. Some are going as far as to say that they are being absorbed and integrated into the Camarilla. And while I don't think that is true, it is, however, very clear who the greater power and partner in the relationship is. One owns half the world, the other a bit beyond one peninsula. But to discredit them over this would be foolish indeed, for there is no true power than knowledge, and one group that focuses on scholarly knowledge alone should be listened to. Since our closer ties, they have led me and other powerful kindred into their most sacred of lands to view their wisdom. And I'm not exaggerating or being overly complimentary when I say this, but it was one of the greatest privileges I have ever been given. If you yourself have a translator of your own, I highly recommend you do the same, should the chance present itself. That being said, there is another part of me that does not wish to go back. I've had this urge, this calling to go somewhere in the Middle East for a little while now. I know what this can be, and I dread to face it. I refuse to give in to what other elders have. I will not answer the call. Sorry. I was rambling for a moment there. Pay me no mind. The Ashira. Many view them as an aspect of the past, a sect long fallen and quite forgotten. And while it is true their best days will forever be behind them, there is still so much power and wisdom in their words. If revisiting the past as recent has taught me anything, is that when something is gone, it is gone forever. The amount of things that deserve this fate can be counted on one hand, and the Ashira are certainly not one of them. Disagree with them all you wish, but you should listen to their words, for there is a lot of power behind them. Thank you for listening to my tales. I'm the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It really does mean a lot to me. But, till next we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.